Oh my. Well, alrighty then. Looks like we got someone else to help. Welcome back to the Joy of Welding, everyone. We've got a fantastic episode for you today. We go into our Weld app community and help those that are struggling and posting pictures, seeking guidance on their welding journey. Let's help this week's student out. This week's Weld app member is Damian Hoyt. He's practicing some overhead 4G welding, and it's pretty bad. I'm glad you know, Damian. If you got any tips, feel free to help out. I see some obvious fundamental things wrong here, Damian, and it's gonna be a real simple fix. Now here on the Joy of Welding, we like to replicate all of our students' work. It looked like, Damian, you were working on a 4G weld in the overhead position with a back strap, likely on 3/8 plate. Now this is a common test, but don't worry, Damian, it is kind of tough. We went ahead and cut and prepped our material and also fitted up properly. Remember, prep and fit up is 2/3 of the battle. We took our extra fire machine, cut the 3/8 plate in half that I had laying around the shop, and then went ahead and kicked that old dog at a bit of an angle. The trick is to follow some nice guidelines. I opted for a scribe to scribe the part in half, as well as putting that little bit of a line behind my edge so that I never passed it as I was putting that angle on this piece of plate. That got the meat of the problem off, so then we clamped it down to the table, took our 3M fiber discs and our abrasive, and we took everything nice down and even, checking periodically, making sure that everything is nice and straight, getting the tops, the bevel side, and the underside free of that mill scale. That's going to help ensure for a good, clean, sound weld. We also have that backing strap to think about and prep. I went ahead and took the mill scale off one whole side so that it is the bond between our two pieces, and we want it as clean as possible. 3M is hosting Clash of the Grinders this year, and you don't want to miss it. It's $15,000 they're giving away to first place, and to every contestant they're giving free abrasives to their school for an entire year. Don't worry, second place will also get $10,000. Third place will get $5,000, and just for showing up, you'll go ahead and get $1,500. I tell you what, that's such a competition. Anyway, let's get back on track. We went ahead and fit this thing up with a good gap. I went ahead and put 2 plates underneath my backing strap of the same thickness so that we made sure that our prep was not only nice and even and it was straight with our fit up, but everything was not cattywampus. Make sure you have all these things together. We're gonna go ahead and use our 1/8 7018 electrodes to bump the amperage to about 120 amps on our ESOB Renegade Volt. Now this is a battery powered welder, but today we went ahead and plugged it right into the wall because it was just the easiest machine I had laying around to get on this table. Let's talk about this root pass. The overhead position is not to think different than the flat position. Really, if we do our rod the justice as far as keeping a really tight arc length and the right angle, as we come through this joint, we want to be really close. We got to know that that arc is also providing a little bit of dig, giving our rod room to breathe. So we can really be close with this arc length in the overhead position. As long as we maintain those angles as we work our way down and across, as that rod burns, we should be able to put the perfect weld in. The trick to this 7018, there isn't one. Just keep the rod really close and go really slow. That's it. We're going to keep it right in here. If we do a little bit of oscillation, we may just do that. But really, being that our fit up is just enough room for this 1/8" rod, I think it's safe to say we could probably give it a drag. I like to go ahead and put my electrode in my 45 up position, and as we have our rod at the appropriate travel angle, as it burns, you'll notice about how far you may make it and where your hands will be at. You need to make sure that you're comfortable where your hands are going to finish, not where you start. So we're going to go ahead and start up right above the bevel, and then we're going to work back to our backing strap and then cover up all that stuff. The trick here, my good friends, is just keeping a close and slow travel speed and arc length. Come back. Make sure we grab all 3 pieces of material before moving, and we stay nice and close. If you start seeing a bunch of dripping, you notice that that's probably from your arc length being too far away. Just shove the rod in there. Nice, slow travel speed. I want to make sure that I am tying into all 3 pieces of material. And again, keeping that tight arc length. If I notice my hands dropping, I'll probably get some drips in the process. You also notice in Damian's weld, he had a lot of waves in that plate. That was from his hands dropping, seeing that they were dropping, and then going back into the weld. Keep a nice, slow, close travel speed, and you'll be able to knock this weld out with no problems anytime. If you see waves, it's from going in and out of your puddle, and if you see all that porosity, that's from that long arc length and not getting proper gas coverage as this rod burns. It should not be a tough rod to remove the slag from. If the slag is difficult to remove, it's likely you didn't follow one of those rules. We made it about 3/4 of the way to the end of this plate, and that's typical. If you're finding yourself going much more further than that, it's likely you have too fast of a travel speed. Now let's talk tie-ins. We're going to have to tie into this crater here, and we're going to do this process for every single bead on this coupon. We're going to strike up well ahead of our crater, get that tied arc length before we decide to move back. This is going to happen fairly quickly, and as we move back to that, we want to pause. And that little bit of time between our travel speed of turning around, getting back and turning around should be adequate enough. Get that tight arc length, hold it, and you'll be able to burn out all that trash. We're going to be doing that exact same concept of striking up, coming back, tracing our crater, and then keeping that slow and close travel speed and arc length throughout this entire weld. But we don't want to put all of our tie-ins in this one spot. As you might know, we were going to keep welding, and as we want to stop each time in this location, we don't want to make a good habit of that. That makes a weak point in our joint. We're going to go ahead and finish this rod, have a little bit left over, strike the arc with the remainder of the rod so we get the use out of our material, and our next tie-in will be located in a new place. What a good habit to follow. Here we go, we restrike. Let some of that burn off because we don't want that. Trace our crater. And again, maintaining that slow and close arc length. Now typically I'd like to stay in one place while I do this whole test, but that's not easy as we get to doing our camera work. Be careful, you will get some drop bombs on you. Be prepared to catch something in maybe your boot, your shoulders, your arms. This is perfectly normal, as you did pick a career path that does involve molten metal. But the less metal you have dripping on you will be due to that arc length, and as we get towards the end here, we are seeing quite a lot more drop bombs, but we're going to fight through it and finish on our backing tab. I got a spicy boy right there. Oh, wonderful. Let's give our weld that quick jimmy. And always give it a good inspection before you continue. I don't love the way I restarted. The tie-in is good, but we had a hard time getting back onto our bevel direction. For the most part, everything is even. I did favor this plate a little bit more than that plate as that rod was burning. And that's something to think about as we move into the next bead. Is it something that we need to correct now? Maybe grind it back, fix it a little? I don't think so. What we are going to do is hopefully the arc flow that may have happened on the end of this plate, if there was any at all, I don't think there was too much. Those magnetic forces can build up and get tighter towards one end of the plate, causing a lot of magnetic movements of your puddle, and oh my gosh, it is just a mess. One thing that you can do to prevent it that's really easy on plate is just simply welding the other direction in the next passes and then switching again, and you'll be right back to normal. Let's start these fills. Now usually I wouldn't stand under this thing, as it is going to be having the tendency to drop those big sparks on me. And looking from one side of the plate, you can't see the back side of this one. I want to be looking right down the barrel of this old dog. So I'm going to move my head back this way and we'll continue on. Starting on that backing strap, we're going to go ahead and opt for 2 beads now. 120 amps. And I'm a little shaky, I don't have myself braced on anything. It's okay to shake. Just have a really tight arc length and just try to keep your hands up. That's what I like to think about. One of those good old-fashioned rap songs where they like to be in the club and just keeping their hands up. Keep your hands up, 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 up. What a fun song. We're going to keep our hands up and maintain that left side of the bevel as we put our first bead in the fill-in. We made it past our other tie-in, and that's good. So now all of our tie-ins won't be in one location. Well, it may be just a fun fact where we actually are able to make it to the end of the plate. But if I have the choice, I like to stop a little shy. Wouldn't you know? That's right on the tie-in where we said not to do it. It's not the worst thing that can happen, but it's something that we try to avoid. There I go again. Let's go ahead and knock that little bit of slag off and continue our weld. Again, the trick here is just keeping that tight arc length right up into the plate. If you can do that, you won't have all those bumps and humps or porosity in your weld. The overhead weld is a mean position, but it still wants to be treated like flat. So just remember how flat position likes it, and just do everything just as you would as if you were welding in the flat position, just over your head. Don't overthink it, just do it. Shia LaBeouf really knows what he's talking about. Keep his hands up, 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 up. Now we still have enough rod to go ahead and start that other weld so we don't make that same mistake or putting our tie-in in the wrong location. Careful, that slag is super hot and you don't want it down your shirt. You'll be jumping around like you're in the club. Stud on that backing strap. Work onto our plate, and now we're just going to favor this right side. We may have to move a little bit quicker as there's not as much room, as we took up a lot of this space with the fill on the previous bead. That's where we'll stop. Now that I got my cameras out of the way to finish this bead on the fill, you can kind of see my more comfortable position. I've got my elbow up in a nice location so that I can keep my hands up. I'm able to maintain that work angle, my travel angle, because I'm staring right down the barrel of my two bevels, and I can see the easy spread of my puddle. I again also like to work towards myself, so I kind of know exactly where I'm going. Nice and comfortable, nice and smooth. What a journey. What a way to get to the end of this plate on our first fill. Now let's talk about whether or not this is adequate. Can we cap it? Or should we put some more fill in? What are the questions? Now the $1,000,000 question, are we ready to cap? And I love the expression by an old friend of mine, how many tacos does it take you to get full? You tell me. I got a good way of thinking about it. Well, it depends on the taco size and depends on how hungry I am. We've got some 3/8 plate with some homemade bevels on them, so it's kind of give or take what may happen as far as how many tacos I've got to put in my belly. Now, if I've got some 3/32 electrodes smaller than these 1/8, I'm going to need a lot more tacos to fill this groove. So don't get stuck on putting a 1, 2, 3 bead fill just to accommodate that OCD. Put in there whatever it needs. If it needs a little here, a little there, grind a little there, go ahead and do that if you're allowed. We're probably going to go ahead and put a 3 bead pass just for how these bevels turned out. And we're getting a little high up here, but if we weren't allowed to grind, I'm just going to zip right through that location before I cap it. We want to make sure we keep everything nice, clean, and hot as we weld out, because when they go to the bin test, we want to make sure everything's nice, clean, and tied in. But it's likely that we're going to have to put a 1, a 2, and a 3, all while staying inside those bevel edges. We do not for even one second want to let our puddle get past those edges, because those edges are the only guides that we have for a cap pass. Well, alrighty then, let's do it. Let's get these fills knocked out. Through that spot just to get out of it. There's so much meat there already. You can see real quick, but hey, the metal was already there. Oh, there's still one more. It's gonna be a fast one. Right through here without getting over that edge. If I had a 332 electrode at this point, I'd pull it out of my pocket. Talk a little bit about our cap. Now in these fills, I didn't have to worry about a tie-in because I was able to get all the way across in one rod. It's not likely this will always be the case in the field, so don't make a habit of it. Tie-ins aren't something to avoid. But you'll notice that on either side, I still have my bevel edge showing almost about a 1/16 of an inch of it showing, and the middle is nice and full. Again, we want to make sure that our stomach is nice and full before we go ahead and try to cap it. We are going to be trying to capping in roughly 4 beads. Again, this might not always be the case, but you have to follow your bevel, how much filling it actually needs. It's not likely that with my homemade bevels that we put on here with the plasma cutter that they're up to specific codes. It is a little bit wide, but it works awesome for what we're doing, and we'll be able to put a nice 4 bead cap. Again, just staying slow and close and just doing exactly what we've done this entire time. The trick to this is again holding that slow and close arc length travel speed and just taking our time, methodically putting our welds on there, being full before we're ready to cap. Alrighty, let's cap. And the first bead on the cap speaks for every layer. We really want to take our time, setting the stage right for ourselves. I'm keeping my rod on the inside of that bevel edge and going nice and slow, letting that puddle fill out. Again, my rod is still on the inside of the bevel edge and letting the puddle fill out on the back side past that edge. You guys are making me sweat. We should have nothing but peelers on our cap. And again, if we start seeing waves, we know even without the pinholes that we're adding a little bit of an arc length change. We want to make sure our tie-ins are as good as they're going to get because they're visible for the world to see. No need for a new rod. We'll just go ahead and start right next to it. I spoke too soon. Typically, if we start seeing undercut, it's probably because we're going too quick or we're in a hurry. Don't get in a hurry. Again, slow and close. But after you put the first bead on, you should be able to dictate whether or not you can make it in 3 or 4. We're going to shoot for 3 and see if we can't cheat the system. If we want to get this in 3, we got to ensure that we tie into the highest point of bead 1, and we leave just about less than 1/8 of an inch of room between the bead that we're putting right now and that bevel edge. So it looks like the bead that we're doing right now is going to be adequate, but we need to make sure it just has proper fill, and it isn't going to have any low spots in between each of these beads. I'm not really putting a lot of motion, if anything, just a little bit of circles. Just a little bit of oscillation. And that's just to help lay down those toes when we don't pile up too high in the center. We're getting to a stopping point. Going nice and slow, putting all of those tie-ins in the same spot. Gee whiz, Austin. Just that last little bit to go. We've got an old rod sitting on the side. Hiya! Every time. Always want to blame the rods, not the welder. I'm thinking things are going to be just going our way when it comes to that 3 bead cap. We've got this rod already on there. Let's go ahead and start this next bead. Again, this arc length is going to be the key here. Keeping it as close to that plate as we can. This 7018 1/8 rod will undercut this plate. It's just giving it that time to fill itself back in. You got quite some filling to do here. So we're going to keep it tight to that other bead while going extremely slow to make sure that we fill everything in. I think it's going to look good. One more weld to make, and this plate is made. We don't want to rush out of those restarts. Even though it looks really nasty, we've got to still spend our time there. If we don't, we're definitely going to pick up some defects or discontinuities on the way. We didn't stop to let this plate cool or quench this plate whatsoever. We never turned down our amperage. 120 amps root to cap, overhead position with a backer. Let's take another look after we've cleaned it all off. As we take a closer look at our 4G overhead weld with a backing strip, I'd say we did a pretty okay job. I see one good problem as far as our travel speed right in this location. We could have slowed things down to match the rest of our bead at the beginning, at the end, and that might help prevent that uneven edge, or maybe just a bit of shadowy undercut that people on the internet might call. As for everywhere else, we don't see a single pinhole in here, which tells us that we've got the appropriate arc length for the job, and as well as no waves in our beads going down the plate. We don't have those humps and bumps letting us know that we weren't in and out of our puddle. Those are some telltale signs of what you're doing. So pay attention to those pinholes and those waves and bumps. And again, there is no trick to this 4G weld. It's just keeping it close and slow. If you can maintain those variables, you can weld anything with the 7018. If you're a student and you're trying to get better at welding, get inside that Weld app, post your pictures, ask those questions. There's a bunch of people in there trying to help and engage. And if we can do our best, we'll put it right here on the channel. We'll see you guys on the next one.